wherever you are under the sound of my voice, this remains a Pan-African Drive, a platform that is meant to inspire and motivate the current generation of young Africans in the actualization of their respective dreams, preaching the message of peace and national unity, as well as revitalizing the Africanization policy that speaks about good governance, social justice, democracy, human rights, and most importantly, the African unity. With me, Tony Michael Howell, Alliance News Secretaries. And for tonight's edition of the Pan-African Drive, we are super honored, should I say very privileged, to be in a one-on-one conversation with a Gambian diplomat and politician who has served the United Nations for donkey years as a legal practitioner at the highest level. He's climbed a very enviable height in his career and academic ladder. It happens to be Mr. Amadou Jaiteh, and he's here tonight to share his expertise on what I call the UN African Affairs, its merits and demerits. Should I say welcome? It's super honored to have you here.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you for having me here, and thank you for having Progress Movement also here. I'm saying greetings to all your viewers, to all our viewers in the Gambia and outside the Gambia, the diaspora, and all African countries all over the world. I'm saying good afternoon from the Gambia.
That's my guest there, the fountain of knowledge, like I said, has climbed a very enviable height in his academic and career ladder. He has served his country for a very long period of time here, and it happens African Drive. For those of you who are watching us on TikTok, Facebook, the YouTube, and Instagram, we see the massive salute and respect to you. In the absence of a viewership, there is no Teledial TV, so we salute and respect you big time. Sir, your party is, how did you coin the name?
For that question, I mean, Progress came about, it came out as a result of a delay in progress in our country here, the Gambia. And we thought about so many names that we thought that should be considered. But Progress is a name that we feel encompasses all meaning for where the country is at right now. The country is, we believe, is stagnated or on a constant reverse mode, and we need to progress forward. So that's why that's how the name came about.
Okay, so yeah. Can you drive us through that acronym PROGRESS, what each of the letters stand for, so that an average Gambian out there can have an understanding
of what
progress is? Yeah.
Oh yes.
About it.
Oh yes. People's Progressive Movement for Growth. People's Progressive Organization for Growth. Renewal, it means renewal of politics. Okay. Currently, the political dispensation in Gambia is very partisan. Nothing moves. There is all constant arguments between the political sides. So that's how the renewal come into play. Equity, we believe that the country is not as poor as we deem it to be. In fact, Africa in general is not poor. There is wealth in Africa. Yeah. So equity, we believe that has to be some form of equality in wealth.
Judicial distribution of the national cake.
Exactly. So, and then you come into security and safety. We believe that safety and security and safety is an integral part of development. Okay. Without security and safety, no matter what kind of progress you bring into the country, nothing will get materialized. Everything delays. As you can see, I mean, you're in the news business. Recently, we heard of a tragic incident that happened somewhere here in Bruceby.
21-year-old young girl.
Exactly. And that is not the first. There has been several ones. Robbery in Access Bank, also another bureau de change before this one. So that's why we believe that has to be looked into by government, deliberate policies to put in place safety. Now, the security aspect of it, part of the security aspect of it is also the security sector reform that was promised to Gambians in 2016. During the 2016 coalition campaign, this was a social contract that was actually agreed between the coalition heads and the electorates. And now, almost 10 years, we haven't realized security sector reform. We still have economic soldiers on the soil of the Gambia, and we need to move past that so that we can take over the sovereignty of our own security.
Okay. That's a great one here from my guest. For those of you watching from Western Nigeria, Yoruba-speaking nation, we say to Ibao Nisha, Baolomo, Otudo, Jomenta, to southeastern part of Nigeria comprises of Abia State and Ogun State, Imo State, Ebonyi State, and the rest of our Igbo-speaking people that say one name, the number Ikaraka, EGM, Chukwu Abiyama, Amama Siamasi, Oshimidia Tata, Ekume, Chuko Kike, Odoku Akataka, strengthening all of you wherever you are under the sound of my voice. To the northern part of the country that is dominantly Islamic, I say to you, Assalamu alaikum. To my own Liberian people that say to you, to the Swahili speaking nations, Tanzania and Nairobi, Kenya, will say to you, Asante, Asante Sana, Jumbo, Jumbo, wherever you are. To Southern African nation, to you, will say to you, KwaZulu Natal, Zanzi, Gea, Nimbingelela. To my guy, Constantino Pelotero in Botswana, will say to you, readable Helabo, Langton Jaha, with the Sierra Leone, and I say to you, Unakushio. To the Gambians in Walla, we say, Jerejef, Jerejef. We say, Domala Munafati, Domala Musafati, say, Adonabi, we won't ever forget you. In the Saturday Madinga, we say to you, we can't forget you. The full will say to you, Hirejan, Masude, Nalaga. On the other hand, we say to you, Meedima Moja Moja. This is a Pan-African drive. To French-speaking nations, we say, merci, dans vous supporter. Thanks for supporting us. It remains your platform that builds bridges between and amongst the rest of the African nations. Sir, when I look at your party's name, the Progress, it sounds like a beautiful young woman that has all of the nice features for the man to be enticed to lead her into marriage. But once you bring such woman in your home without observing the character, she changes and becomes quite too different. Translating that into the African context of politics. During campaign period or prior to elections, parties come with all manners of flowery expressions, nice campaign promises, nomenclature, brand names. But once they are trusted with the mouth of authority based on a manifesto or nomenclature or brand names, they change right away and become quite too different. It begs the question, what different does the Progress bring on the political mortgage market in the Gambia that you think is enough to be given a responsibility to be trusted with the mouth of authority to steer the affairs of the nation for the next 5 years, count 2026? What different do you bring on the table?
Thank you very much. But I must first commend you on your African dialect, communication, the greetings in all these languages. I mean, amazing, very adorable.
Thank you.
Progress as a reformist organization, we are young Pan-African-minded individuals, and if you really stand on the Pan-African values, African values, Gambian values, any other country that is in Africa, if you stand on your values, President Nyerere once said, Ujama, you are your brother's keeper. You are one family. So when you value that extended family relations, Africa is like that. Gambia is like that. When you value that, you understand that the wealth that you amass as a country, you realize that it does not belong to only you. Because the principle or the thinking of President Nyerere when he said that, or when he came up with that economic policy, is more about sharing within your community. If you as a family can amass so much wealth and you can share it with your neighbor, then you will find out that the struggle that you go through, you will not face that. So for us, we have that value. We want to make sure that the wealth of the country, where we all are equals, where we all are shareholders, we are able to share this wealth equally. And we are content with who we are and what we have. So we want to be able to differentiate ourselves from other political parties or politicians. So we are not a typical politician, but a reformist people.
That's a great one. You hear that from the house's mouth, not a typical politician, but a reformist. People that are here to revitalize the lives of the downtrodden masses, the Gambian people. Sir, since the departure of Yahya Jammeh, the former president of this country, then led to the emergence of President Adama Barrow, you have an enabling environment for all political parties to thrive. And we have close to 25-30 parties heading to the 2026 general and presidential elections. One might argue that it speaks to the beauty of our democracy. But on the flip side of things, it also speaks to the fact that a small nation like the Gambia that just exceeding 2 million people is divided on huge, or should I say massive lines. presumably a progressive-led administration, what mechanism would you put in place to ensure that the Gambian people are reconciled after you will have won the election to serve as president of this country, presumably?
First, let me address the misunderstanding of the proliferation of political parties in this country to be misconstrued as division. It is not a division between Gambians. Gambians have not even decided where to go or for them to be divided on a political line. No, what you see happening is that many Gambians have seen that what is happening in this country, it shouldn't have happened if we have the right leadership in place. And that is what is pushing many Gambians, thinking that they are qualified, even more qualified than the current sitting president. And that is why. But once you start having qualified Gambians taking charge and coming up with policies that are realistic enough and implementable, you will see all these will reduce and it will go back to normal. And I see this as an opportunity. I do not see it as competition. I think Gambians will be very, very glad and be happy that they are having options to choose from. It's more of an opportunity for Gambians than a division.
It's getting interesting. I got a very wonderful passenger here on the Pan-African Drive, and we're heading somewhere. I hope you are following on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok so that you can enjoy or tap into this fountain of knowledge, a Gambian diplomat who has served his nation for donkey years, and he's here tonight on the Pan-African Drive as a presidential aspirant or hopeful for the 2026 general presidential elections. We're going to be driving quickly to the main topic of discussion tonight, which happens to be the UN African affairs, but we got to drive you through your ambition, so to speak. You just came back yesterday. Yesterday, not as in Monday, but a brand new political institution. There have been old hands in the business who've been here, who have had a structure in place. You have less than, should I say, 12 months or thereabout to the elections?
Yes.
How much are you prepared? Do you have a requisite arsenal in your core to ensure that you create a very serious political havoc come 2026 in the election to serve as a winner? How strong already are you in terms of structure?
Yes, I mean, in terms of structure, as a political movement, as of now, and we are transitioning into a political party very soon, but then we are very confident. And as me personally, I am a leader of a movement as of now. Once we transition into a political party, we are going to open up the leadership position for all members to be able to vie in and express their interests. And then we are going to choose a leader. That's when we are going to have a leader of Progress Party. And Progress, we are very, very optimistic because since we came out, we started doing our publicity. The outpouring support that we've been getting is overwhelming.
So Gambians have been very warmly receptive.
Of course, especially the vision, the manifesto, because the manifesto is key. We have an agenda, we have a vision. And this is the vision that we put out there first for Gambians to buy into. And the reception of Gambians buying into this manifesto is interesting. It's it's great. Because what we are talking about, bringing down cost of living, we're talking about eliminating corruption, we're talking about ending wastefulness, we are talking about minimum wage, we're talking about security, we're talking about depoliticizing. This is the most interesting part, talking about removing party politics from our parliaments and also removing party politics from our local government and bringing people power in charge. Bringing people power at the level of the local governance, and bringing people representatives at the level of parliament, making sure that people are well represented by independent candidates that are non-partisan, that do not belong to any political party, and they can work with any president, regardless of party, or regardless of the president's party, because they do not belong to any political party as independent members of National Assembly. But the president also can work with them because the president does not belong to a party that they belong to because they are independent. So anything that comes in parliament that is nationalistic, in thinking, National Assembly that is represented by independent people will naturally accept it and be receptive to it and be able to promote the agenda because it represents all Gambians. And when it goes to the local government also, when you remove mayors and chairmen and governors, these are political tools that actually divide the people at the local governance level. When you remove them, then you have the people having in place their own model of local governance within themselves as a committee, organizing themselves. So they can work with any president also because the president does not see any party affiliation at that level. This is most interesting, where the wealth is distributed, where the revenues collected also for the community goes back into bringing the community together, investing into the community issues, and making sure that there's more money within the community.
I hear you talk about the community. That means that your leadership is not going to be limited at just the top. You focus on the downtrodden masses, people who should be actually beneficiaries of your leadership. If you went in a street of the Gambia, you see young people. I posed this question to a last guest, and I think it's important that I pose that to you. You see young people standing and sleeping, not ceremonial sleep, because they've been induced by drugs out of frustration and disappointment, or whatever their lives is like. If you travel on the beaches and all that, you're going to see young people building careers for themselves in the form of bombing, waiting for the European counterpart to have a better life. As worst case scenario, they are traveling to the high sea, risking their lives. Recently, we saw 193 left one of the provincial villages of this country, and then they all lost their lives. As a reformist political institution, what mechanism do you have in place to revive in the lives of young people who should actually serve as the social engineers of the Gambian politics? What mechanism do you have in place to ensure that their lives are revived? Not only revived, but giving role to participate in the achievement of our national development objectives.
Very interesting.
You are giving a matter of authority to stay as a president.
Yes. No, thank you for that question. You see, progress as a party, once we become a party and get into governance, you'll find out that our agenda, our manifesto, is a project. It's a reformist project, a project that targets two important stakeholders. One, women, and two, youths. And this part of it I've just talked about, why we are capturing the community at the community level. We are capturing youths at the age or at their very infancy of their growth whilst going to school. We want to transform the education system, a complete overhaul where youths are taught themselves, self-awareness. First, you must understand the self, the African in you, to understand that you are an upright, human being as an African, that you are in this world to be able to produce, reproduce, and also work hard and consider those values and be able to push
to realize the potential.
To realize your potential and to see yourself as a self-reliant human being and a self-determined African and a sovereign African. And if you are a Gambian, you should be thinking like that, as a sovereign Gambian, a reliant Gambian, and a self-determined Gambian. And we have those values in you. Then you see that the opportunities that we are going to be providing at the level of the community where you are, in terms of education and in terms of startup businesses, you then take those opportunities and grab it and then run with it. And the project for us, the target is not to uplift every Gambian from those type of mentality now, but you're talking about in the next 10, 15, 20 years. That's when you're going to see Gambian youths are going to graduate from their current lack of opportunity, lack of confidence, and lack of vision because of lack of opportunities that is not availed to them by the current dispensation. Once you have a government that provide that opportunity, that space for the youths and women to grow and to realize their potential, you will see that will affect generations that is to come. They will understand. And you start with civic education, good civic education at the university, as primary schools to senior secondary schools and to universities, or tertiary educations. Once you build skills of Gambians and you have community development fund that is coming from the revenue that is collected, and then those opportunities are there available for the women to be able to tap into, and for the youth to be able to tap into those funds to start up for either for a startup business or for fees for further education, and then come back after 12 months. If it's a business, then your business is growing and you start to make some repayment. If it's education, you pay after qualifying, then you start working. And once you start working, you are earning some good money, you start to make some repayments into your loan. So those kind of opportunity, we want to make sure that it's available way at the community level, not even talking about national level yet, but at the community level. So you grab them before they get out of those community level at a very intelligent and young mind.
Okay. It's getting interesting here on our drive here with my passenger on a Pan-African drive, or Mr. Amadou Jaiteh, the Gambian diplomat and a presidential aspirant for the 2026 general presidential elections. Mr. Jaiteh, Chinua Achebe, one of our greatest writers in African history, he says that a chick that is a baby chicken that will grow into a cock can be known at the very day it hatches from an egg. Translating that into politics and governance, what has the progress done so far? What are tangible evidence of your work in the Gambia that is enough as decent qualifiers for Gambia to entrust you with a mantle of authority to steer the affairs of this nation come 2026? What have you done they can point at and say, oh, if he had done this at this level outside the presidency, I think he should be entrusted with a mantle of authority to steer the affairs of the nation from the country higher seat. What have you done?
Thank you. And so coming from my very recent position as legal advisor at the Permanent Mission of the Gambia, I have represented the Gambia in this position for the past 9 years. And during this time, I have been in the position of leadership for the most part. I have represented Gambia as coordinator of the African group. During this time, I make sure that I support and I advance the African agenda on behalf of Gambia. And during these times also, there has been opportunity, but maybe I will just give you one tangible example, which is very current, but maybe two. The Gambia is currently serving on the Human Rights Council of the United Nations. My time at the United Nations, this was my initiative that I presented to the ambassador of the Gambia at the time, and that it is important for the Gambia to be on these platforms. It provides soft power to any country. It's just like any country who wants to be on the Security Council as a non-permanent member. So I initiated this and then did all the work that is necessary, the strategy for the campaign, and Gambia was successfully elected to serve on the Human Rights Council. And another one would be currently and recently, very recently, the wall since 1945, after the Second World War, the world has been looking for a stand-alone convention on crimes against humanity to no success. And just recently, in 2019, I was headhunted by a group of cross-regional countries that actually approached me and a colleague from Mexico to represent or to facilitate the way forward on the wall, the United Nations, resolution to adopting, hopefully by consensus, a resolution that will pave the path for crimes against humanity convention. And that was successfully, after several years of negotiation, it was successfully adopted in 2024, last year, in December, by a consensus resolution. And now the world has a clear mandate to start negotiating this convention next year. And when you go into the aisles of history, you will always find this there, that the Gambia, represented by Amadou Jaiteh, legal advisor, co-facilitated this very important resolution. When it comes to human rights, you want to have a convention, that stands to support any act, any type of crimes against humanity. So the Gambia is known for that now on the international stage. And that was through my effort, my individual effort, representing the Gambia there. So I have been doing many of that. When it comes to climate change, I have been able to put the Gambia on a pedestal that helps to go and participate in advisory opinion advocacy at the United Nations Court in The Hague. Many more, but I believe that we can talk more as we go. I'll give you many more examples.
That's a great one there from me. I beg, this is here. We're going to take our first break, and after which we return and then speak more on the UN African affairs, its merits and demerits with Mr. Amadou Jaiteh. Catch you shortly. Welcome back on this drive here with my passenger, Mr. Amadou Jaiteh, who is on a Pan-African drive with me, the Gambian Diplomat, who is a presidential aspirant for Progress. And as a political movement in the Gambia ahead of the general and presidential elections slated for December of 2026. Sir, you've served the Gambia with the United Nations as a legal advisor. You also serve on the African group with the United Nations. That is a body responsible at the UN to agitate or legislate policies on behalf of African nations. What were some of the policies that your group legislated at the level of the UN, and what are some of the tangible evidence pointed on the continent to validate your argument that you actually serve at that capacity?
No, thank you very much. So the African group at the UN does not create or their own policies.
Push the African agenda.
But together, the African group is actually, when I went to New York in 2016, I found this tradition of having a group in every committee up to the level of the General Assembly. And also you have the ambassadorial African group as well. The idea of having this group is to actually forge that unity, that collaboration as African umbrella member states, to be able to communicate and to be able to be on one, one accord, on one agenda, one African agenda. But many a time we are divided on several issues because you find out that when you will have Morocco on a different, pushing an agenda that is not in line with the agenda of Nigeria, for example, or you'll have Egypt, or you'll have Nigeria, or you'll have Eritrea. So we all have different agendas. And this really beg the question, the African unity. When are we really going to have African unity? Because every African country has a different agenda to push, has a different interest to push. But to the other part of your question, there's sometimes a good agenda that we can unite on. One of that was, I remember, Mauritius. Mauritius was a colony of Great Britain, and when they had their independence, independence was given to them, with the exception of, Chagos Archipelagos, one small island within Mauritius, which is very, very dear to the UK for some reason. They gave them their independence, but this particular island, Chagos Archipelagos, they were still controlled by the British, and they don't want to let go of it. And Mauritius continued to fight for the full, entire, independence, including all the archipelagos, all the islands within their, within their territory. But the UK wouldn't allow. So the AU came together, and the Mauritius was pushing for a resolution at the level of the AU, which the AU actually endorsed unanimously. And once this was endorsed unanimously, at this time, sometime I think around 2019 or 2018, I was the coordinator of the African group. And then the Mauritius counterpart, colleague of mine in the 6th Committee legal, expert group, came to me and said, I need your support in pushing this forward, together with the ambassador of Mauritius, because now that we have the African endorsement, and very rarely you have Africans uniting, around one particular issue. And this one, we have the endorsement, and we have to make sure that all the 54 countries are behind this particular issue. So we pushed that together at the United Nations until we were able to secure, we were able to secure a General Assembly resolution in favor of, the African agenda this time. That was now asking for an advisory opinion of the United Nations, of the UN court, okay, of the UN court in The Hague. And then once this happened, these questions in the resolution, General Assembly resolution, was sent to, ICJ, International Court of Justice. It went to the International Court of Justice, and the International Court of Justice was able to deliver an opinion that actually granted Mauritius, that supported Mauritius' cause, and then granted Mauritius a full ownership of the archipelagos. That you cannot have, piecemeal independence. If you have going to have an independence, it has to be in full. There cannot be any, it cannot be in part. And you must also know that ICJ advisory opinions are not binding, but very persuasive. And Mauritius was able to use this persuasive judgment and take it to Westminster in the UK and try to convince and try to find support of the other progressives in the UK against the government, for the government to be able to withdraw from these archipelagos. And currently, as we stand, Mauritius has full control of it.
Yeah, that's a country that is doing so well in Africa.
So well. So that was one of the, important and very memorable resolution that I can think of when I was a coordinator as well of the African group, and I was part of that journey. I supported that journey, and because it was African cause, anything that has to do with African cause. So for me,
you were involved.
I am always, motivated.
Yeah. But Mr. Jaiteh, if you look at a group at such level, the African group, which should be agitating in one accord for, policies or programs that positively influence the continent, what are some of the factors that influence the possibility of having one voice? Like you spoke about having different agendas and so to speak, but you mentioned one memorable success or progress that you guys made. But what are some of the factors that influence the possibility of having one voice at such a level?
It is possible, but it has a lot of politics underneath. It has a lot of interest groups or interest individuals underneath. You see, Africa has been divided since the time of colonialism, the colonial powers. Since those divisions continued up to today.
The influences are there.
The influences there. We have independence, yes, but you see, the influences are still embedded in some of our leaders.
I think it's more of independence by paper.
It's just more of an independence by paper, but there is lack of political and economic independence. And until Africa and African countries are able to attain political and economic independence, the self-determination that our forebears fought for, cried for, we are not going to realize it in full. Because economic independence comes with self-reliance. Once you have self-reliance, my friend, Mikhail, at your home, if another man is contributing to your, everyday daily upkeep or your everyday, exactly, making sure that there is food on the table, or at least there's a contribution for your food on the table, for you and your family.
It compromises your integrity.
It compromises your integrity. You cannot say much in your own house. And this is what is happening, to Africans. At the UN, or elsewhere, this is the issue. Many African countries you go to, they have budget support. Coming from where? Coming from the Western world. And they are very happy to give this budget support. Because you know why? It gives them control. And until we can get rid of this, that control will continue to be there. And it's not difficult to get rid of this. What Progress Reformist Organization and party is proposing, you have to make sure that you maximize your wealth, your revenue that you collect. You make sure that you wisely implement it, you wisely spend it, and then you implement projects, wisely. And where your people are given that self-determination mindset and push for development, to take opportunities where they should take it, and be independent individuals, be sovereign individuals in everything. We are still going to continue to dance the tune, to dance to the tune of our former oppressors.
I guess you are enjoying from this fountain of knowledge tonight as he shares his expertise on the key areas of all national, regional, and continental affairs, especially the UN African affairs, its merits and demerits. Sir, Africa produces the highest voting bloc at the United Nations, and not only that, when it comes to peacekeeping, we produce like 40% of all peacekeepers globally, so to speak. We also have had an opportunity to produce in two Secretary Generals of the United Nations in the Boutros Ghali of Egypt and Kofi Annan of Ghana, may so rest in peace. But on the flip side of things, we've not been treated fairly. Most times when resolutions or decisions that the Security Council is to be taken back in 1994 in Kigali, Rwanda, 800,000 Tutsi lost their lives in that very country based on the slow decisions of the United Nations to take a step to ensure that that conflict was in fact prevented. We'd also have the Central African Republic today with the Selika and Anti-Bellica Christianic and Islamic group in that country. They've never known peace in 2012 till now. And you have the Congo today. The conflicts are all over the place. When it comes to Africa, there are so much of slow steps taken by the United Nations. If you look at the Ukraine and Russia war right now, these steps become very faster. Why are we always being compromised as a continent, even though we produce the highest voting bloc at the UN? But when it comes to decisions that have positive trickle-down effect on other people, the UN is so retrogressive and slow.
It goes back to my previous comment. It doesn't matter if you have 90% of the vote, but if you are a follower, your votes can be compromised. And your vote, the direction of your votes, your voting power, can be determined by others. And this is exactly what we are facing at the United Nations. At the United Nations, yes, we have 54 votes at the United Nations. The highest, of course, the biggest bloc, of course. And we have fought there on several issues to make sure that our participation is also representative of our numbers. And we have achieved, to some extent, when you go to the Human Rights Council, you will have that the participation on the council, you have more African countries than other regions. So regionally, we try to make sure our representation is higher. But if you look at the representation at the UN, at the managerial positions, we don't. Even though we have the numbers, we are not there. But it also goes down to our contributions also.
We have requisite individuals with the right mindset to do the job.
Yes, we have the right set of people to do the job, but you have to also understand the United Nations as a body, as an organization, has to be funded. See, Africans, we do contribute, yes, but you find out that those that contribute the most tend to be
from the other side
the other side, and they tend to be also serving a managerial role within the UN system itself. See, the biasness is within the UN system itself. Most of the management portfolios, the holders are from the other side of the aisle. Africans are usually at the low-ranking levels, not so much of a decision maker, right? And then you come at the level of this member states. Member states, you have 54, but then you see that the 54 countries themselves, some of them, their votes or their participation is determined by the other country sitting next to them. Even when we are there, you are voting for something that you believe that this has no division within Africa. We can unite on this particular issue. You will see they will be voting, other countries will be voting, in a pattern of vote that you cannot just understand or comprehend. And you keep asking yourself, how can this country vote like this? But it is beyond your understanding, because politically, they are controlled somewhere. It goes back to my previous comment. Political and economical independence. If you don't have that, your decision is not yours. Your decision is always determined by others. You just follow. And to be honest with you, African countries have been following a lot. And that time needs to come to an end so that we start to lead rather than following.
Yeah, but Mr. Jaiteh, if we look at one of the core values or principles of the United Nations, the protection of human rights, regardless of the fact that we have no permanent seat at the level of the Security Council, but one innocent life is a tragedy and must never be minimized. And you look at countries, 5.4 Central African Republic, 3.4 need humanitarian aid. You have internally displaced people. You go to Sudan, the conflict is still raging. You go to the Congo, so to speak. Do we actually need a seat at that level for our needs or our rights, our lives to be respected and valued? I don't think so. Because one of the key principles of the United Nations is the protection of human rights. Why things are always slowed about us?
Well, that's a good point to make. Because when we speak of human rights, which is universal, there it doesn't matter whether it's Western country, whether it's African country.
Exactly.
What matters is that life have been lost in Africa, in Sudan, in DR Congo, and this needs to be considered stopped. And need to be stopped. And it's a responsibility of the world, the United Nations key player, the United Nations Security Council key player. But the issue here is that the United Nations itself is politicized. When you go to the Security Council, do you know that Security Council is the only body in the United Nations that has the binding authority? And when the Security Council's resolution is passed, it's binding. But you have the P5. The most powerful countries that are in control of the Security Council. The rest of them that are there, they're just there for 2 years and they're out. And they can contribute to the work, to the daily work of the council, but the real decision takers are the P5, the permanent five. The permanent five has the veto power. They can decide to do and undo anytime they wish. So you see, when you have a system like that was built during the time of the creation of the United Nations, Africans were already out. The League of Nations, when it was coming together, it started there. The Africans were not a contributor. And that is what led to the creation of the United Nations and the Charter of the United Nations that created the P5 within the Security Council. So to reform that, African countries have been fighting for Security Council reform for so many years, but to no avail.
No avail.
And we continue to persist, we continue to fight. But the decision at the General Assembly is not binding. It can be taken unanimously, or all saying that okay, we need 5 African countries as, as permanent, seat holders. Once you get to the Security Council, they can just
flush it out.
Flush it out. It just takes one veto power to end it.
So deductively, are you saying that bulk of our challenges we've had, we've been compromised, is the issue of leadership was not being able to conduct ourselves orderly as African nations, so that we have the right strong-willed to push our agenda, hence the compromise of Africans at a higher level there?
Yes, part of it. Leadership is key. You have leaders that are already within Africa that will not even agree among themselves who would lead and to become, just in case there is some level of acceptance for Africans to be part of Security Council membership, then who is going to be part of that membership? You have Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt. You have all these countries that, Ethiopia, that are fighting among themselves first. Who would be there? Who would be one of those seat holders? That's one thing.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. But before you even get to that, we continue to have a voice of reason, of course, calling for reform of the Security Council, which is very fair request, is a very important request. We form a majority there from, one of the biggest regions is Africa. We have to be a part of the discussion. We have to be a part of the discussion. And
That's right.
And 90% of the issues, concerning peace is in Africa.
We need it.
Is in Africa.
Yes.
90% of issues concerning peace is in Africa. So you cannot be talking about African peace in the Security Council
Without Africans' involvement.
Without African involvement. In the core of the decision making, the P5, we have to be among those ones. So that the decisions that are made, we are there, sitting there. But we are mostly just following others taking decisions, and that is why African war or humanitarian issues in Africa or conflicts in Africa is secondary. Once Ukraine comes on, Sudan is forgotten. Once anything that comes in the Western world, the African countries are, forgotten. Currently, Sudan is in the worst state of conflict that one can imagine, worst state of humanitarian, issues that one can imagine, and so is DR Congo. But then it is secondary to Ukraine. You compare since Ukraine started, how much billions have actually
been placed in that.
If you can have just a quarter of that for Sudan and DR Congo,
the conflicts will be resolved.
Will be resolved.
Or even the Central African Republic.
Exactly. But then there's no interest there. All the interests are focused on outside Africa. So then it makes you also question yourself, is the United Nations here for all, or is it here for a few?
Is it right for us to describe that relationship as a win-loss approach for Africa to the UN?
It's important to be in the United Nations because no country wants to be isolated. Also, a continent like Africa cannot afford to be isolated and be out of that world body, because a lot of other African countries benefits from the United Nations and bring in from the idea of having the world coming together as a United Nations. Many of us, benefit from that. That is important to be there, to be in the negotiation, and to have the peacekeeping forces in place, to have all of the arms, the structures that the UN brings, and the organs that the UN brings. Yes, but then when you think about it, you mentioned Rwanda in 1994. Then the genocide could have been avoided when the UN was on the ground, but they were only there to do what? Peacekeeping. And their claim was they are peacekeepers. They cannot take certain decisions, or they cannot involve in certain decisions. And they have to just stand by and watch or leave whilst Africans slaughtered themselves. So then it makes you question again yourself the importance, of the United Nations in their presence in Africa and their relations with Africa as a continent. But it's an institution that we cannot afford to be out of as at now until we ourselves are united enough to be able to carry out our issues within ourselves.
I think that also speaks to the fact that I think it should be an opportunity for Africa to value the African Union and revitalize it so that we are strong enough to manage our own affairs without any external intervention, so to speak. Because if we have been compromised at the highest level of governing body of the United Nations, what happened to the AU? Why can't we be able to check in-house and find our own solutions so that we can be able to resolve some of the conflict even before they arrive? Conflict prevention. What do you have to say about that?
And that is the main reason why the AU
was established
from the OAU to the AU. The whole idea of our forebears, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Sekou Touré, and all of these people that came together, this was their, thinking. When you wake them up today and ask them whether they are happy that what the Africa that they find today, maybe they will be disappointed because the Africa that they envision.
I think I will remove maybe from your statement. They will be disappointed.
They will be disappointed because the Africa that they envision in their struggle, they wanted to have a united Africa. They believe that we will face a lot of struggles along the way, but at the end we will prevail as Africans, where we can come together as one and support each other and then see one another as your brother's keeper. These artificial borders that we have between our countries really is not the real border. I mean, we were one before, and these borders were created just to be able to loot and transport our wealth to the West. And up to today, we still have our wealth, our artifacts in the European museums, benefiting the economies of this Western world. And then every now and then we get piecemeal support coming in the form of development aid. But really, it's a money that we own that is coming in different forms.
We are driving close to the end of this conversation here with my passenger, Amadou Jaiteh, a Gambian diplomat and presidential aspirant for the 2026 general and presidential elections under the progress. Sir, you spoke about Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere of Tanzania, who happens to be the first president of Tanzania. May his souls and the souls of our faithful departed rest in the arms of the Lord. Even on his dying bed, he spoke to the people of Tanzania. He says, "Jombo, jombo, kumfutanya yozangu, kumfutanya yozangu nakupenda." That is greetings to you. Follow my footsteps. Follow my footsteps. I love you all. Follow my footsteps as in the Tanzanialization policy that is not irrespective of tribe, not irrespective of region or section, so to speak, but a unifying spirit in terms of internal solutions to the Tanzanian concerns or challenges. If you were to do a survey across the 54 nations and a half, I say and a half, because we have Somaliland now that is shortly expected to have an independence, so I say 54 and a half. If you were to do a survey between and amongst this nation, which African nation, head of state or president, do you think has the moral ground to replicate the statement or the voice of Julius Nyerere as in "Kumfutanya yozangu, follow my footsteps"? Who do you think we can be modeled after currently?
Well, maybe the current the advent of Ibrahima Traore of Burkina Faso.
Why do you say so?
Because Burkina Faso has always led in this area of African leadership and also Pan-Africanism and Africanism. And Nyerere calling for us following his footsteps. I believe that what Ibrahima Traore is doing is exactly what we need. But unfortunately, the Western system of democracy, again, which is very chaotic, he did not come through that. So he's not approved to be a product of a democracy. But then it remains to be seen whether that is the way to come in order to be able to get the country moving the way we think it should move, or whether we should follow the Western system of democracy that is delaying progress in many countries. But who am I to decide on that path? But
that's a great one.
I'll leave it at that.
We are going to the end. Just before I take leave of you, I give it a minute. We should be divided into 30 seconds each. If you were seated before all African heads of state and government, to speak to them on the essence of revitalizing the structure of leadership so that we have the voice up there at the highest level. So in terms of our independence and structure, what would be your choice of words to African leaders?
I think my address to them would be, let's go back to our forebears and their visions, and let's go back and review what their statements were, what they used to say. You mentioned Nyerere a lot. Let's look at Nyerere, for example. The Ojama project, for example. Let's look at those kind of a project. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's focus on our individual countries, growing up, without any dependency, without believing in development aids, without taking anything from anyone. But let us focus on using our wealth, our resources within our grasp, and try to see how we can maximize that, to grow within that, without depending on anything that is coming from outside. And then we try to join our wealth together as Africans and see how we can trade among ourselves, and then be able to grow as a continent within this wealth that is within the continent. So first within the country, wealth, and then outside within the continent, wealth, and then we see how we can trade among ourselves and grow out of this, dependency syndrome. Because what that will do to us, we will not have surprises such as, aid being cut off by the United States anyhow they want and anytime they want without warning. It makes a lot of African countries destabilize in certain project areas that they were, in the middle of implementing because of their dependency on the Western world has been cut off. So let's go back to the drawing board. Let's go back to the forebears and their thinking and their vision. Let's start working on our wealth within country and within region, and then realize what is there for us.
Please use any of your favorite vernacular that you quite better with and fluent in and talk to the Gambian people. Talk to them about the Reformist Party ahead of 2026 elections. What do you bring on the table? Your last words. You can speak Mandinka or all of what you're comfortable with about your political institutional way for the Gambia.
So thank you very much. Progress.
Want to use a vernacular?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Progress as a political reformist organization for growth, we want to make sure that we bring, people-centered development, people involvement into growing in becoming that country where we want to be without dependency. Mbokk yi maa ngi leen di nuyu di leen gërëm te di leen wan tamit jërëjëf si teewaay bi si ni ngeen nekk di ñu seetaan fii on Pan-African Drive. Progress moo leen fi ñëwal te di leen won ne ñun de jóg nañ pour isil askan bi a new system of development, a new system of politics in the Gambia that has no partisanship but forward thinking for development only. Mbadi ngol ntelem Amadou Jaiteh mbal kontona from Progress kaitana la ko ntole nata jambi on Pan-African Drive Teledal TV kaitana la ko Progress de new movement leti Mialanko is transitioning into a political party to bring new system of governance, a new system of development to all Gambians. A people-centered development, more better than Namina, than Infanang, Nabankola, Kodo, Nabankola, Sorofiol, Kaju, and Batala, Nyote Manyadile, until Narabukole, Itandi Banko Dimola, inshallah, Allah support, Mbo Kelale, Mobe Kela Kilindi. Thank you very much.
That's a very beautiful experience having you today on the Pan-African Drive with me, Tony Michael Howard on Teledal TV. Like we said, this is a platform that is meant to build bridges between and amongst African nations. Should I say to you, it's been nice with Mr. Amadou Jaiteh, a UN diplomat and presidential aspirant. And quote of the day says, a cat that wants to be remembered as a lion must first stop chasing rats. Do you need me to explain better? I'm not going to do that. Catch you some other time. It's been a beautiful experience with me, Tony Michael Howard, CKA, News Socrates. Follow on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram on Teledal TV. See you some other time. Bye-bye.